All right, we are live. Thank you so much. My name is Jamie J. I'm the founder of Bottleneck Distant Assistance, and I'm really excited. Typically, we reserve this for more of a presentation type format, but I was so fortunate in talking to Mike Damphousse, for those of you that don't know him, aka Damp, good friend of mine, unbelievable category designer, along with Kevin Maney, who I finally have had the privilege of meeting after hearing his name for many, many years through a good friend of mine, Christopher Lockhead. Kevin Maney, one of the co-authors of a book called Play Bigger, which is typically sitting in right there, but I have the category design toolkit there because I loaned Play Bigger to my wife, and so she is reading it. Absolutely love this book, Play Bigger. If you haven't read it, I cannot recommend it enough. It has been a complete game changer for us. Back in 2022, we almost closed Bottleneck down. We were very close. And contrary to popular belief, even though we are a remote-based staffing agency, you would think with the onset of social distancing and COVID and being shut down that we would had an amazing growth spurt. And the exact opposite happened. So Christopher Lockhead, a good friend of mine, also a co-author of Play Bigger, came in and worked with us on the power of category design and how much words matter. And it completely changed my thought process, my mindset on how business should be conducted. And I'm so excited to share this with everyone today because you're going to hear right from the horse's mouth. Mike Damphousse works as a co-founder to Category Design Advisors along with Kevin Maney. So go check out categorydesignadvisors.com. We'll be posting that along throughout on the bottom ticker here. You'll see that start going along there so that you can kind of check it out. But if you're going to be watching the video, I'd encourage you to maybe reserve that URL to research it afterwards because this is going to be some amazing content. So without any further ado, Jeff, can you go ahead and bring Damp and Kevin in? Hi, Damp. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Great. Good to be here, Jamie.
Hey, yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And I wonder if we could start off with a quick introduction, if that would be okay. Kevin, if you want to kick it off and introduce yourself and let us know a little bit more about who you are and what you do. I'm pretty familiar, but for those of us that are just being introduced to you, I'd love to hear a little bit of your story.
Sure. Well, so I'm Kevin Maney. I am a founding partner with Mike of Category Design Advisors. But prior to that, I mean, I spent most of my career as a writer in some way or another. Worked for a number of newspapers and magazines as a journalist. I've written now 10 books, one of them being Play Bigger. And almost everything I've written has been about, there's Mike's holding it up, that almost everything I've written has been about the technology industry in some way, or about business and the philosophy of business and big ideas and things like that. And then, along the way, Play Bigger turned into a phenomenon. I think it's like something like 250,000 copies sold worldwide. Its language has been widely adopted in the entrepreneurial and startup community, and that led to helping companies do what we wrote about, and that's been a blast for the last 7 or 8 years.
Well, fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us. I have several questions that I want to get to. But just before that, Damp, I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about your story, your background. And I am so impressed with what you do. I had to copy your look. So shaved head and beard. I feel a lot better and a lot smarter now.
I just did it the opposite. I put the hair up here.
It's funny. I have always had facial hair one way or another. I used to have goatees and whatever it might be. And then a while ago, I ended up getting Bell's palsy. So I let the beard grow bigger to kind of hide the lip that's kind of like droopy underneath. And it's just a beautiful look. And, Jamie, I know when you visited me in Florida, you had hair and you looked at me and you said, God, he's a beautiful man. I'm going to look just like that. So then you went for the shaved head. So anyway, my story's simple. I'm an entrepreneur that has not learned better to, dedicate my life to whatever passion I'm working on at the time. I started as a computer science guy back in the 80s when code was programmed by real programmers and not drag and drop. It was pretty fun. I ended up doing a demo to some very senior people as an engineer. And they said, Mike, you are so articulate and can command the room. You shouldn't be in engineering. You should be in marketing or something. And that was the end of being a programmer. I ended up, taking a marketing role, ended up at that company, working my way up to a VP position, and then started my first company. And I've had, 4 or 5 companies that I've started, 2 exits, 1 exit with a contract project I worked on for a year. And, it's just been fun over the years. And I was in the Play Bigger community. I hired Dave Peterson back in, I think, 1999, hired him from Christopher Lockhead. Actually, he was working for Chris, and Chris's company was thinking of acquiring my startup. And I got to know Dave through due diligence and ended up bringing him in to head up my marketing team. So that brought me into the Play Bigger, family. And over the years, I did a couple projects with him. Back when it was, we called it category marketing. Category design as a term didn't even exist. And time goes on. They bring Kevin in to write the book with them. And the book gets published in 2016. And about a month later, Dave calls and says, "Hey, Dan, the book is being crazy successful. We have so many leads coming in. Would you and Kevin want to team up and maybe start like a version of what we do on the East Coast?" And so Kevin and I met in New York City and hit it off. And, we've been doing it ever since. So now here we are, 45 projects later, hundreds of startups that we've touched through incubators and VCs. Things are cranking. We love what we do. And we've thought about, are we ever going to retire? And we both like what we do enough that we probably will keep doing this until we can't.
Wow, I love it. Thank you for the overview. Yeah, I think what you said is category design never existed, and that in and of itself is it just regurgitates in my brain every single day how much words matter. And it's amazing how you can create something out of nothing by streaming a couple of words together to kind of create something that is new and innovative. And so, Kevin, I was wondering if I could start off by asking you the questions. There's a lot of basics that, and I'm referring to a lot of the basics, not basics necessarily, game changers, really. But there's some things that I guess I want to ask you about category design. But before I jump into those specifics, could you kind of elaborate on what category design means to you and how that has not only changed your life, but changed the people that you've worked with in the past?
Okay. Well, I mean, there's lots of long explanations we could get into, but there's a whole book about it. But essentially, I mean, category design is a way to it's kind of an outside in way of looking at your company or the product you're making. And instead, look, if you go to 95% of tech companies' websites, the first thing you're going to see is something that says, "This is what our product does." And that's backwards, because what matters to the people you're addressing is what it does for them, what it means to them. So category design is it's a methodology for looking at the market and trying to understand what's missing in the market, what problem there is that needs to be solved or solved in a new way, understanding that problem thoroughly, and working backwards to make sure that, first of all, your company and your product is addressing that problem. But then also using, as you say, Jamie, words to frame that problem in such a way that the audience you're addressing truly understands it and comes to believe that you're the one who knows how to solve that. And that's a first step in this idea. We use the term category design. That's the first step in not just identifying a category and building a product that try to be in it, but also trying to shape that category so that you as a company are the ones that are setting the rules for it. And you are the ones being seen as the visionaries, because it takes time to build a category and to win a category. And you want to sort of design it at the beginning so that you're at an advantage, because others are going to come into it. If it's a category that matters, others are going to come at you. And you want to constantly, over the years, be seen as the one who is the designer of that category. And that's the way you can ultimately win a category. Now, it's very simplistic, but it is kind of the starting place for what category design is all about.
I'm gonna add to that though, Kevin, and that is that over the years, it all started with category design, and it's all about creating the category in the market, dominating it, winning it, and owning that category. But one thing that's really interesting is Kevin and I discovered over the course of time, it's not just the market aspect of category design that's valuable. It's a proxy to strategic, strategy within the company. If you're going through the process of having the discussion about your category, having the debates, having the sometimes, all out brawls to make good decisions, you're setting a category strategy that's really the company strategy. And it's almost like the projects we do, I've almost felt as if it's almost like couples therapy, group therapy for the company. And by the time we're done, the process was a proxy for company strategy, not just category design. It's really powerful and fun to watch.
That's interesting that you say that, because there's this thing that that was drilled into my brain for quite some time, and I had a hard time figuring out what it really was and what it meant to bottleneck, and that was this magic triangle. This magic triangle that offered the new component to what most people do. They think about those. What is that? It's called product market fit, and how wrong that thought process, that mindset is, when it should be product category fit. And it took me a while to kind of figure that out. Kevin, do you see that the people that you talk to about this, they have a challenge in the beginning trying to reset their thinking or the way that they approach this from a product fit to more of a product market fit to more of a product category fit?
Well, I'm actually going to adjust your phraseology just slightly, because there's something we've started talking about when we had a realization. So the idea of product market fit, which is, by the way, was kind of introduced to the tech community by Mark Andreessen more than a decade ago, and has become something that everybody talks about. So if you think what product market fit naturally sort of means is we're going to build a product and we're going to try to find a market to fit it into. And hopefully we can plug it somewhere that's going to somewhere it's going to be accepted, which is backwards. And we started realizing that the real phrase is market product fit, is that you want to identify a market, design it, create it, and design your product and your strategy to address that market. So we started using the phrase market product fit. And you're right, Jamie. I mean, that is part of that is an important part of that is that the market you're addressing is hopefully one that you're creating, a new market category that you're creating. Because again, going back to the beginning of this, is that look, there's thousands and thousands of companies that get built that just go into some existing category and try to scrape some market share away. And they're actually, some of those can be decent businesses, and some of those build a product, sell it to Google, whatever. But you're always going to be trying to scrape some market share from somebody else, and you're always going to be making an argument that you're better or faster or 10% cheaper or something like that. And that's an argument you have to constantly make, right, every single day. If on the other hand, you can create a market category and set yourself up as the designer and the leader of that category, and get that sort of mojo, then you, first of all, your economics are much better because you tend to have pricing power. You tend to be able to drive the category in your vision, and others are always following you. But also, it's it's lasting, right? I mean, you win that position, and you become part of the cognitive biases in people's minds, and it's harder to blow that out of people's minds. And in fact, you don't have to make that argument every single day. You're sort of established as that leader, and it's why in smartphones. I mean, look at all the smartphones that come out, and everybody still in their heads believes that Apple is the best and the leader or whatever with the iPhone. Apple sort of some analysts have found that Apple takes something like 95% of the total profits of the entire smartphone ecosystem, including Android and everything else, because they have established themselves as that cognitive bias in our minds. Even if somebody else comes out with a phone that could arguably be said as better, we almost don't care. And that's the power of category design and winning that category.
That's a great example, and thank you for sharing that. It reminds me of Coke and Pepsi, and how the little kids stood on the Coke to reach the Pepsi machine, and that I think it was that way around. But Coke or Pepsi, I forget which way it was, but the other company was just sitting back going, "This is great, free advertising."
Yeah, right.
Right. But I also wonder, there's so Amazon is pretty good, pretty good, solid category. And Prime delivers in 2 days and all that kind of stuff. And I recently heard something about Target launching, and this is what they said: Target's launching their version of Amazon Prime. And so that is the epitome of category design, in my opinion, because they sit atop all of that. And you're right, they get so many opportunities to dictate what it is they want to do. Damp, I wonder if maybe you can answer this question for me. One of the biggest challenges I've had in category design is educating the world on the difference between our particular category and why it is so different. And our team, by the way, every single person on our internal team has read Play Bigger. So we never say the word better or anything like that. We're always talking about the differentiations that we offer. And that's kind of our theme. But my question is, Dan, what would you suggest to people out there that are embarking on this category design adventure, and once they launch it, getting people to understand what those differences are and how that can add more value or a different kind of value to that organization, so that the clients know, hey, this is what they're all about.
Yeah, hold on. I'm still selling my Target stock. Hold on. Okay. It's funny too. I have a whole fund that I've created of category leaders that are public, and it's outperformed every major index for the past 4 years. It's pretty amazing.
Wow.
So the strategy works. I should find out how to make the fund something people could actually follow. There's probably a way to do that.
There's probably an app for that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Or you could create one.
So you read Play Bigger, you want to do category design, you want to get your feet wet, what to do first, and what to stay away from. I would say the biggest problem people face is they usually think category design is all about the three-letter acronym when you're done. What did you name it, right? Customer relationship management, CRM. Oh my gosh, that's the category. That's what we got to work towards. Let's have, our executive leadership team do an offsite, and we can't leave till we have 3 letters. That is the biggest mistake people make. Category design is about understanding the problem you solve, understanding the problem people didn't even know they had that you solve. We dig so deep in the problem that all of a sudden you'll start to see the category. And once you see the category, you can't unsee it. I call it a universal truth. It's like if you're sitting with me right now in Florida, you'd look out and see blue skies. And you couldn't debate that. If I said to you, Jamie, it's a blue sky today, you'd look up, there's no debate. Well, if I say there's the category, this is what our category is, and this is the problem we solve, and here's how we solve it, you can't unsee it. And if you can't unsee it, then somebody's going to build it if you don't. So that's when you have that moment of let's go forward and make this thing happen. But, focus on the problem, understanding the problem, creating the narrative point of view that describes the category in a way that is emotional to people, that grasps their interest, that forms those cognitive biases that Kevin was talking about. And in the end, a category name is going to just appear. It's going to be a drop the mic moment. You're just going to know this is what we should be calling ourselves. And oh, by the way, if you introduce the category to the market, which, this is where marketing comes in. This is another misconception of the book. Everybody, just thinks category design is nothing but glorified marketing and positioning and messaging. That's like late in the game. Category design is, the whole executive leadership team in a room, and the marketing just becomes the tip of the spear to deliver it publicly. But when you start getting out there and you're introducing the category name to the world, and let's say an analyst starts using a different term, or the market itself refers to your category as something slightly different, that's okay. Embrace it. The category name is just the label on the container that has inside the container the problem you solve. And if you're the solution to the problem, it doesn't matter what the label is. It's just a tattoo for the container. So don't be so tied to the category name that you're not willing to accept the fact that an analyst just made you the upper right company in a quadrant that they threw their own 3 letters at. The point is you own the category, and that's the important part. It's the point of view in your story that sets the category in your terms.
Yeah, thank you. I like that, the provocative point of view. In a sentence or less, describe what the problem is. In our case, we tend not to say problems here at Bottleneck. We say challenge. But what is the challenge that you're experiencing, and how will you overcome that? What's that end result that you're looking for? And if you can identify and shrink that into a sentence, people kind of get it when you talk to them about that provocative point of view. We did have a question, Kevin, and I wonder if you might be able to answer this. It says, how do you measure, and this is from Grace, I believe, how do you measure the success or effectiveness of your category design efforts? And how do you ensure that your category remains relevant and continues to evolve over time?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So, going back to something Mike was emphasizing too, is that category design is a whole company strategy. It's not a marketing campaign. And I know there's been a lot of chatter in the marketing universe in the last 6 months or so about how measuring marketing is ruining marketing. But there's so many ways to measure, marketing assets and all of that. But this is not that. This is a company strategy. So ultimately, the way to measure the success of the strategy is whether the company's succeeding or not. Is revenue growing? Is it, is the valuation of the company increasing? Are you able to raise money from investors? These are the things that tell you that category design has worked. And about remaining relevant over time, categories are things that have a life cycle of their own. We write about it both on our site and in the book. This economist named Paul Gorosky, who studied the life cycle of categories. And it's obvious that it's important to maintain yourself as that leader, that visionary, that one who's designing and driving the category for years on end. It's not something you do once and then just sort of set it free and hope that for the best. It's a constant everyday process. So, once you have that strategy and that North Star, then it's important to rally the company behind it and to maintain that and continue to evolve it over time.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's pretty much like whatever. It's such a, for me, it was such a break from what I was normally used to in thinking about how we differentiate ourselves and how we make ourselves better. And it's so refreshing once you get it clear, something clicks. All of a sudden, something clicks. And Damp, when you say that, you're going through all this stuff, and you're right. There was some stressful times that we were trying to figure out what was going on, and with the added stress of, are we going to close down this company? And we decided not to. We decided to fight on. And one of the things that Lockhead told me was, Jamie, don't. I go, boy, should I trademark this? And he goes, no, don't trademark this. And I wonder if you can touch on that and maybe elaborate a little bit as to why not trademarking.
Well, it's interesting. It's the first question lawyers ask, especially if there's one in the room while we're doing our project. And here's the deal. If you trademark it, then nobody else can technically use it. And you want the category name to be utilitarian. You want it to be like, the term CRM is just the term CRM. The term frozen foods is frozen foods, right? There is no trademark symbol after the word electric car. And if you were to do it, if you were to trademark it, then it becomes more of a brand. And the brand is about you. The category is about the problem and the customers, right? The market. And nobody cares about your brand, frankly. I've seen some of the worst visual and emotional brands actually kill their category and own it. The brand is just a label, right? It's a representation of who you are and the image of who you are. But the category is the category, and it needs to stand alone. You want your competitors to use the category terminology. You want analysts to use the category terminology. You want customers to use the terminology. Now, all that said, there is some gray area where, let's say your category name is out there, you're launching the category and you're 2 years in, and all of a sudden some competitor decides, I'm going to trademark this. Well, that's a problem, because now they are going to lock it up for use. And you could probably defend it that, hey, it was, publicly being used, et cetera. But there is a legal defense for this. There's something called intent to use, ITU. Tell your lawyers to look into it. ITU basically gives you the right of first refusal on a trademark. So if you came up with the trademark strategic category design, that's, the category we refer to ourselves as. If I wanted to trademark that, no, shelve it. But an ITU basically is an application to the trademark office that says someday we might trademark strategic category design. And so they give you the right of first refusal. So 2 years down the road, if somebody applies for that trademark, you'll get noticed, and then you have the option of doing it. And if you have to, then you make the decision. And, I would probably register it to defend it, but I'd probably use the TM symbol only in legal documents, the little footer on your website, and I'd never defend it. I'd let people use it all day long. I'm not a lawyer. This is advice from Damp.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good advice. Kevin, I have a question for you. And so I'm trying to figure out how to say this without sounding like a geek lover of Play Bigger, but I actually had people that I go into consultations with, and you can tell when they've done their research, because they'll ask me, so what is a distant assistant? And I love it. Like all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, we created that, cool. And it's starting to happen a little bit more, because one of the biggest challenges we had was the virtual assistant industry was getting confusing, especially when AI was introduced and people are using, AI virtual assistants to schedule their calendars, and they weren't real true human beings. But a lot of our clients, they actually wanted the interaction with that real human being. And so being able to talk about the differences between a distant assistant and a virtual assistant, being transactional based in nature versus being more intimate based relationship in nature, and you can see people just getting it, and the light bulb goes off and they understand, but it takes a little while to educate them. I wonder if maybe you can talk about how that felt for you when this first started kicking in and people started mentioning category design And now you're starting to see people putting category designers as, descriptions in LinkedIn. I wonder if you could tell me how that journey has gone for you, and kind of shaped how your presentation now happens when you're talking to new people.
Well, yeah, no, it was, when we wrote the book, finished the book, Play Bigger. So I came into that as I'm a writer, I'm an author, and I've written a bunch of books before that. By the time, there's this 9-month lag between the time a book is finished and the time it ends up being actually published. And within that time, I already signed a contract for another book. I was off in a different direction, and if there's any authors in this session, they'll know, you can't expect to make money off of book sales. I mean, that just generally doesn't happen, right? And so, I assumed Play Bigger was going to be another that sold pretty reasonably well, and it just, kind of went out there, and then the thing comes out, and when it's, I don't know, it's, you watch these different movies, you hear interviews with people who are rock stars, and they talk about the first time that they walked out and heard their song playing on a car radio or something like that, and just going like, oh my God, we did this, we set this thing out in the world that starts to, and to start hearing, Jamie, almost as you say, you start hearing other people who have no connection to me whatsoever using the term category design, starting to say I want to be a category designer. And I've never experienced anything like that. Like the idea that you set an idea free in the world that and by the way, our ambition from the beginning with Play Bigger was essentially to open source the idea of category design. We wanted to create a movement. We wanted to create a profession that people would have, and the idea that it happened is just totally amazing. And one of the best feelings I've had in business and as an author.
Oh, and I have to say, congratulations! Yeah, that's pretty amazing. It's amazing seeing the impact that this process has had on so many of us. And so we take off our virtual hats to you and tip our hats. I think it's fantastic. Damp, I wonder if maybe you can give us a good example in your experience that maybe you and or Kevin have worked on in the past that turned out to be an incredible example of category design, and what made that particular example worthy of you mentioning it.
Well, before we do that, I want to just jump back on the movement that's going on out there, and plug categorythinkers.com, which is a community, online community, a Slack community, and a podcast all about category design. And there are, I think, 700 members now, and anyone can join. Categorythinkers.com. I'm one of the co-founders and co-host of the podcast. Kevin gets involved quite a bit on the podcast, and it's just a great place. Everybody's there. Christopher's there. El Ramadan and the Play Bigger guys are there. It's sort of the destination to be if you're a category designer. So anybody should, if they're interested in category design, go join. Anyway, as far as impactful categories that we've worked on, there's a real fun one that, depending on what business you're in, you may or may not have seen this before. But there's a company in Israel that came to us it was just prior to the shutdown, the pandemic, company called Ripples. And Ripples was a company that had been around for about 6-7 years. They started off by basically building, think of an inkjet printer that printed edible ink on top of the foam of a coffee or a Guinness beer. And it is cool as shit. It literally can do photographic quality printing on top of a drink. And when we started with them, it was all about the printing of stuff. It was a printing company. And when we went through the process, it turned out we totally transformed what they thought about their business and how they thought about the product to a media company. Basically, the tops of these drinks, right? Whether it's a coffee at Starbucks or a Guinness beer at a pub, or, in their case, they were sponsored by InBev at the World Cup. Every beer that you got at the World Cup had nitrogen in it instead of regular carbon dioxide bubbles. Nitrogen creates the foam. So you'd buy a beer at the World Cup and the score of the game would be printed on top, or the logo. It was really cool stuff. So we basically transformed the company from a technical printing company for food products to a media company. And the category is called BevTop Media, Beverage Top Media. So BevTop Media I thought it was one of the most interesting projects we worked on, because it literally transformed how they thought about themselves. I don't know, Kevin, you have an example that you think tickles the fancy?
Well, I guess it's worth addressing, since we're here on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah.
That we should address that one. The LinkedIn Sales Solutions division came to us to work on categories. So they had been around a decade, and had been obviously successful from the beginning. It was $1 billion division within LinkedIn, but 10 years later, they felt like they didn't have a compelling story to tell. There was a lot of competitors nipping at their heels. And they felt that people didn't really understand, salespeople didn't really understand what the kind of data and first party information that LinkedIn had could really do for them, and why it could address the way that the sales profession has changed over the last decade or 20 years. And so we sat down with them, the whole leadership team, and that one there was maybe 15, 16, 18 people in the room, I don't know, and just hashed out. As we've been talking about, we started with a problem. How has the sales profession changed? Why is the technology that's out there making salespeople nuts, and instead of actually helping them with their jobs, and really understanding the problem to be solved, and why the other technologies that are out there aren't solving it. Eventually came up with this, realized there's a story there about how selling today really has to be something that's very intimate and personal. People don't want to be sold to. They don't want to be contacted out of the blue. Salespeople really need to know the people they're addressing and what they need and when they need it, and not going down that path of more like intimacy. And so we ended up coming up with this phrase called deep sales, because it really was about like deep learning, deep understanding of people. And from everything we've heard since then, and if you've been on LinkedIn, and you probably see posts, because people across the company at LinkedIn have been posting about this. It really reinvigorated the sales team for LinkedIn Sales Solutions. We had a lot of people that were in sales come up to us and say, thankfully we have a narrative to tell. We have a story to tell that makes sense to the people we want to tell it to. That was a big win for the sales professionals in that unit. And Mike, you probably know this better than I do, but from everything I've heard, the performance of that unit has been one of the best in LinkedIn since the category was established. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know the exact metrics, but the three major divisions they had, the feedback I got towards the end of the last fiscal year was that they were outperforming their numbers, where the other two divisions were somewhat still flat. But really interesting to work with a company of that nature. I mean, they're I don't know how many billion-dollar division of a trillion-dollar company, Microsoft. And category design is not just for startups, right? And that's the one thing it taught us. It's a little bit more complex, because you've got a lot more moving parts to deal with in a big company. A lot of more established thinking, but the same strategies worked. and broke through, and we were able to pull it together to the point where I remember presenting the category point of view to an analyst, one of the big boy analysts. We will not mention names. And I know the analyst personally. So about, I don't know, 4 months later, I'm talking with him and I said, hey, that call had so many people on the call, I didn't want to really, take advantage of my relationship. What'd you think of that category point of view for them? And he goes, dude, nobody has ever captured the story of their own company the way that point of view did. He said, I'm not kidding when I tell you I almost got choked up and had a tear come to my eye. And that's, if you can accomplish that with an analyst, never mind what you're going to accomplish with the market. This stuff is just so powerful. You're speaking with emotion. You're helping people put Band-Aids on a gaping wound. And if you can do that, they're never going to forget that category. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah. Like Maya Angelou says, you can forget what people say, but you'll never forget how you made them feel. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, right?
Oh, I'm going to steal that, Jamie. Thank you.
Yeah, she said it way more elegantly than I ever could. But it was that gist. I did want to make sure real quick. Mike Sackmary jumped on and he said, "Distant assistant is how Jamie explained to the world that DA means a real human." That's pretty neat. Thanks, Mike. And he also wanted to know if that latte, if they could put the Airborne logo on that. I guess since I was former Airborne,
you can print anything. You can print anything.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, thank you for sharing those stories. My objective in you maybe explaining some of your successes was to shed some light on what category design can do and how powerful it is. I still want to maybe shift back because we've got about 3.5 minutes left before we wrap, and jump on the challenge that we've experienced here is simply the education, and it seems as though it's challenging for me to educate people, maybe even on the website, or if they're looking for a service like ours. But if I jump on a call with somebody and I spend about 10 minutes, they go, oh, and I'm wondering if that's because my messaging isn't short enough. Our provocative point of view here is we assist business leaders who are doing the wrong things to delegate their work and focus on doing their best work. That's in essence what our provocative point of view is. The challenge with that is people don't know what that means, right? And so I would be remiss if I didn't say that that's a big concern of mine here personally, but also I'm sure that's something that other people, and I don't want to assume anything because we all know what that means, but I would think that would be something that is a challenge to prospective clients of yours and your past clients. And I want any idea on that, Kevin?
Well, so definitely. So if you think of it this way, is that if you're establishing a new category, you're establishing something that doesn't exist yet, and that space in people's minds for that thing doesn't exist yet, and so we would tell any company, any client of ours, that education is a big and necessary part of category design once you figure out what that category is and what the languages you want to use. And and other companies have come at that in very different ways. I mean, sometimes depending on what their stages or what they're trying to achieve, but it could be anything from just what they put on their website to doing like thought leadership pieces. We've had some clients who've actually then gone and written a book to try to establish and educate people about that category and that and what it means. But there's no question that education is one of the big mountains to climb in category design, because you're creating something that doesn't yet exist. So you have to open up that space in people's minds and help them understand not only what it is, but what it means to them. And that's you can do that in many different ways.
Yeah, I would say one of the other aspects of evangelizing the category, which I think is now becoming more and more prevalent with companies today, is community. and building a community that has your super consumers, right? Eddie Yoon's term, super consumers. When you start a community and the community takes on a life of its own, and the community is breathing the category every day, that is something that's going to create the movement, and the movement will create the category. It's people that eventually, make the category real.
I agree 100%, and that's a great point to end this conversation on. Again, Dan, thank you, Kevin. It's been an awesome pleasure. Thank you so much for jumping on board. Do you have anything else that you would like to say to wrap up before we call it a day here?
Yeah, I don't. Look, I mean, to really get speaking of establishing a category and writing a book about it and all of that, I mean, that was our intention. To create the category of category design, and to create the category of category design, we wrote a book about it called Play Bigger. And if there are people on this call that really want to dive in and know a lot more about it, that's the place to start.
Yeah, and I'll throw a shameless plug for Kevin. Kevin just released his first fiction novel called Red Bottom Line. You can get it on Amazon, Red Bottom Line. And so Kevin is more than just a brilliant business author. He's got a great story to tell, and it's out there. Go get it.
Oh, that's great. Red Bottom Line.
Yeah, it's about Russia in the 80s. It's late 80s, early 90s. It's a really, really compelling, cool story.
I'm gonna have to check it out. Did you do an audiobook?
No, not yet. That's still to come.
I know a very deep voice that would love to read that book.
Can you do Russian accents?
Duh.
I was about to try one, but without any practice, I don't.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Well, thank you very much to you both. I really appreciate your time today, and just thanks for the insight. I'm sure a lot of people will be getting to learn a lot more about category design that maybe not have been exposed to it prior. So this will be replayed. We did go to LinkedIn, to YouTube, and to Facebook. So it will be on a constant replay there. We'll also be sending out everybody that has attended and that wasn't able to make the call today. We'll be sending you an email with the replay link so that you'll be able to view that, along with all of the information about category design advisors. And you can go to categorydesignadvisors.com/book office hours. And that's a dash in between book office hours. categorydesignadvisors.com/book office hours. You can go there and set up a conversation with one of the category design advisors and start your journey that way. I would highly encourage you right after you click the Red Bottom Line and purchase that, but that you go and you purchase Play Bigger if you haven't done that already. And I think you'll find a lot of really neat, interesting things. It's going to spark a lot of ideas. I cannot recommend what these amazing humans have done to open up this world for us in with a new light and a new way to take a look at business. It's very very thoughtful, and I just can't recommend it enough. So I want to say thank you so much. My name is Jamie J. I'm the founder of Bottleneck Distant Assistance, and on behalf of the Kevin Maney and Damp of Category Design Advisors, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to talking with you again soon. Feel free to reach out, categorydesignadvisors.com. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jamie.